In Palestine, more than 22,300 people have been killed and about 57 have been wounded since last October 7th, with the intensified siege by the government of Israel. In Argentina, the National Chamber of Labor Appeals suspended on Wednesday through an injunction the articles related to labor legislation in the emergency decree issued by President Javier Milei. In France, the National Institute for Statistics and Economic Studies reported that internal inflation closed in December 2023 with a rise in the Consumer Price Index. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Rosabal from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Palestine, more than 22,300 people have been killed and about 57 have been wounded since last October 7th with the intensified siege by the government of Israel. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported that 70% of the victims are women and children. It also reported that during the last 24 hours, the Israeli army killed another 125 civilians in new attacks on the Gaza Strip. After the constant bombardment by Israel, more than 1 million people are living in overcrowded makeshift shelters and in unstable conditions due to the worsening humanitarian crisis in the territory. We continue in Palestine when Israel is shelling and the attacks in southern Gaza continue and may be planning a large-scale ground incursion into the neighborhood Deir al-Rand and surrounding camps. Our teleSUR correspondent Javier with the news.
Continuous Israeli bombings and strikes on middle and southern Gaza. What is happening now in southern Gaza, in Rafah, Khan Yunis, Deir al-Balah, and the camps surrounding Deir al-Balah actually happened in northern Gaza weeks ago. Apparently, the Israeli forces are planning for a wide-scale land incursion inside the Deir al-Balah and the camps surrounding Deir al-Balah. Here is what happened, and specifically talking about the Al-Maghazi refugee camp. This camp is 5 kilometers away from my current location. We are talking about tens of thousands of families and people who are residing in the Al-Maghazi refugee camp. No evacuation order have been issued. Actually, this area was marked as a safe area. However, during the night, the Israeli forces entered the Al-Maghazi refugee camp, surrounded the Al-Maghazi refugee camp, and actually now we have snipers on the front gates of the Al-Maghazi refugee camp. No one can get in or out of the Al-Maghazi refugee camp. So we're talking about some families that managed to evacuate at the early hours of this morning. However, now there is hundreds of people that are stuck inside the Al-Maghazi refugee camp with nothing. Gaza already suffers the lack of clean water, the lack of food, and now we have hundreds of people stuck inside the Al-Maghazi refugee camp. Talking about the numbers, the Palestinian Health Ministry said that 180 people were killed in Gaza over the past 24 hours, and this brings up the death toll here in Gaza up to more 22,500 people killed since the 7th of October. Noor Harazin, teleSUR, Gaza.
Since the start of the Israeli siege on Palestine, limited capacity in hospitals across the besieged Gaza Strip, as many patients are not receiving the medical follow-up they need. Let's hear from one of the residents from the Al-Maghazi refugee camp.
A house near us was struck. My sister was injured, and among the first people at the scene was Dr. Achar al-Hamarni, one of the first people at the scene after the strike. He treated my siblings and the rest of the injured, and we thank him and hope that he will always be present on the scenes of strikes.
In this contest, Gaza nurse Achar al-Hamarni has been treating the sick and injured at homes in the Nusayrat refugee camp.
Of course, because of the lack of capabilities in hospitals, I refuse to volunteer at the hospital. Medical staff are largely present, but here in the refugee camp, between the streets and in people's homes, you won't find a nurse that will make the rounds in people's homes. and it's hard for hospitals to accommodate patients. So 24 or 48 hours after they were admitted into hospitals, patients are given their discharge notice and have to leave. So there needs to be a qualified medical team to make the rounds at their homes. Before the war, we used to deal with cases of diabetes, with stitches, simple cases, without pressure or anything. Today we are working under immense pressure and fear, but we are doing this work for God and for a bereaved nation.
On Thursday, also in Palestine, Israeli forces besieged North Shams camp in the occupied West Bank. The occupation army carried out for the second consecutive day a military incursion into the camp located east of the city of Tulkarem. The soldiers wounded at least 2 Palestinian citizens, detained a dozen of people, and destroyed infrastructure. At the same time, Saudi forces demolished the house of fighter Gaid Shadaja in the Al Jura neighborhood, who was killed on December 17th. Thousands of mourners have gathered in Beirut's Tariq al-Qadida neighborhood for the funeral of Hamas Deputy Saleh al-Aruri, assassinated in a suspect Israeli drone strike on Tuesday. Al-Aruri was killed on Tuesday in a treacherous Zionist attack, Hamas said on his official channel. Hamas Politburo member Issad al-Sharq called it a cowardly assassination. Al-Aruri was a senior official in Hamas Politburo and was known to be deeply involved in military affairs. He had previously headed the group's presence in the occupied West Bank. Earlier, Lebanon's state-run national news agency said the blast killed at least 6 people and that it was carried out by an Israeli drone. Hamas stated that al-Aruri's killing will not undermine the continued brave resistance in Gaza, where the Palestinian group fighters are battling Israeli ground forces. Saleh al-Aruri was born in 1966 in Arura, Riyan Ramallah in the West Bank. He enrolled at Hebron University in 1985 to study Islamic Sharia law. During his period, he was elected head of the university's Islamic faction. Aruri joined the Palestinian Resistance Movement, Hamas, during the first uprising against Israeli occupation in 1997. From 1990, he was imprisoned by Israel several times for his activities, starting with administrative detention, and served his longest sentence of 15 years before being released in 2007. In turn, he was exiled by Israel to Syria, then moved to Turkey, and finally settled in Lebanon in 2015. Al-Aruri became a member of the Hamas Political Bureau in 2010 and assumed the position of vice president in October 2017. In 2015, the United States designated al-Aruri a global terrorist and offered a $5 million award for information leading to his capture. Iran Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian, after his killing, referred to Israel and the U.S. government as the evil activity of the terror machine that is a real threat to peace and security and a serious alarm to the stability of the countries of the region. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you find news in different formats, new days, and more. Other studies coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In Argentina, the National Chamber of Labor appealed suspended on Wednesday through an injunction the articles related to the labor legislation in the emergency decree issued by President Javier Milei. The government, for its part, vowed to appeal the measure. The Attorney General of the Treasury, Rodolfo Barra, will file the judicial appeal on Thursday, arguing the Labor Chamber has no jurisdiction over the decree. On Wednesday, the Chamber had accepted the request made by the Trading Center to deal with a lawsuit against Emergency Decree 70/2023 and its implications on labor matters. In the event that a conflict of competence is open, the matter will have to be resolved by the Supreme Court of Justice. The worker organization in Argentina firmly rejects the government mega decree, which repealed or modified 366 without consulting the Congress and heavily affected labor rights. Bolivia's government reported a reduction in feminicide cases in the past year, 2023. The Chancellor Eduardo del Castillo pointed out that when Luis Arce assumed the presidency of the country, the cases of feminicide decreased approximately 30%, registering in the year 2023 a total of 81 as opposed to the 95 cases registered in the year 2022. In turn, he added that the departments of La Paz, Cochabamba, and Santa Cruz have the highest number of registered cases. In such a way, the Bolivian prosecutor's office indicated that the main causes of death of women are due to asphyxiation, blows, or trauma. In Bolivia, Law 348 in force since 2013 and penalty femicides with 30 years in prison without the right to a pardon. In Peru, the National Association of Journalists announced that the country suffered the worst year for press freedom with record attacks against journalists and reporters. The agency said that during the year there were approximately 352 attacks on journalists and press personnel, the high figure recorded in the 21st century. The capital is the most dangerous and violent place for the press with a total of 208 attacks, followed by the northern province of Trujillo with 19 attacks. The main aggressor for journalists in 2023 was the civilian population with 136 attacks, followed closely by law enforcement and security agents with a total of 106 cases. This is the highest number of attacks on journalists and press personnel recorded in a Latin American country. In Venezuela, Vice President Desi Rodriguez announced irregularities in the business relations between Guyana and the U.S. transnational ExxonMobil. Through his account on the social network X, Rodriguez stated that more irregularities continue to come to light about the business relationship between Guyana and ExxonMobil. The lawyer Christopher Ram announced in one of his most recent columns to Break News that the Natural Resources Fund, NRF, destined for the payment of taxes has 276 billion Guyanese dollars, which is equivalent to $1,322,000 that should have been transferred to the Guyana Revenue Authority, GRA, as established in the agreement signed with the oil companies that were illegally in the waters that to be bounded. Guyana continues violating international law and the Geneva Agreement to favor ExxonMobil and other transnationals. Venezuela will not give up in the defense of the eastern Guyana. In Japan, 78 people are dead after the 7.6 magnitude earthquake that struck the country's west coast on Monday. Local authorities in Ishikawa Prefecture, the worst hit by the quake, updated Thursday the death toll and said that 51 people are still missing. Rescuers battled the cold to reach communities that remain cut off 3 days after the devastating earthquake efforts have also multiplied before the 72-hour limit is reached, after which it is almost impossible to find people alive. Experts have also warned of aftershock throughout this week and the following that could be of great intensity.
I was in Kanagawa when the quake struck and came here the next day on a relief mission. We have not found any dead people. The police cannot confirm any deaths, so the person in need of rescue has been rescued. Depending on the situation at the scene, if the scene is difficult, more people are brought in and rotated so that we can save as many people as possible within the so-called critical 72 hours period.
On Wednesday, at Jaibanga World Bank, President reiterated his commitment to increase lending capacity by encouraging greater investments in the fight against climate change.
I think people in the global south recognize very well that you cannot fight poverty without fighting climate change. The only difference is, what do you mean by climate change? The developed world tends to speak about climate change as mitigation. The developing world tends to speak about climate change as adaptation, because they see the climate change impact on them in terms of irrigation, rainfall, soil degradation, loss of biodiversity, forestry cover, that kind of thing. Whereas we in the developed world tend to talk about climate change in terms of carbon emissions. That's the real difference.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. In the United States, a shooting was reported at high school during the first day of classes after the Christmas and New Year vacations. On Friday morning at Prairie High School located in Iowa, the attack took place and several law enforcement vehicles moved to the site for evacuation. According to the local media, there is a heavy police and medical presence around the school. According to local media, there is a heavy police and medical presence around the school where the streets near the scenes are blocked. The shooter at the Prairie High School is dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound, and multiple senior law enforcement officials said. 3 others were injured, including 2 students, an administrator, and the officials added.
This morning at approximately 7:37 a.m., we had a Sears radio activation at the high school, which indicated an active shooter situation. An officer first arrived within 7 minutes of that activation and located multiple gunshot victims. We're still unclear of exactly how many are injured or what the extent of those are, but we're working on that right now. There is no further danger to the public. The community is safe. We're just now working backwards, trying to figure out everything that happened and make notifications.
In France, the National Institute for Statistics and Economic Studies reported that interannual inflation closed in December 2023 with a rise in the Consumer Price Index. The Bureau recorded that 2023 closed with a 3.7% increase in taxpayer costs. The sector with the highest impact for food with 7.1%, energy with 5.6%, and services with 3.1%, not to mention cigarette, which had an increase of 9.8%. In the case of food, inflation in the last month of the year remained low after exceeding 12% in 2022. Citizens remain concerned about a year-on-year variation. As for services, the price boom was marked by transportation. In Spain, the company Telefónica and the union signed on Wednesday an employment regulation plan that foresees up to 3,421 dismissals, many of which are expected to be voluntary, and a collective bargaining agreement to reduce the working day to 36 hours. The agreement, in which the trade union forces UGT, CCOO, and Sumaros Fedico participated, means a reduction of 1,700 affected workers in relation to the official plans offered by the company. The Employment Regulation Plan, which establishes different exits and retirement conditions according to age, workers who reach 56 years of age or more during 2024 and have a seniority of more than 15 years may join. The plan will cost the Employment Regulation Plan of the company around 1 million. The plan will cost the company around 1.3 billion euros and will result in the average annual direct cost savings of about 285 million euros from 2025. The Supreme Court of Senegal is considering on Thursday the appeal filed by opposition politician Ousmane Sonko after he was sentenced by the Dakar Court of Appeal to imprisonment for defamation and public slander. If the Supreme Court's first criminal chamber upholds the decision of the Dakar Court of Appeal, Ousmane Sonko, a declared candidate for next February's presidential elections, will be disqualified. The 49-year-old Senegalese politician has been jailed since the 8th of July on several charges, including calling for insurrection, conspiracy with terrorist groups, and endangering state security. Sonko has repeatedly branded his judicial troubles as political machinations against him. It should be noted that he was sentenced to 2 years in prison in June. On Wednesday, thousands of Somali residents gathered to protest against the agreement between Somaliland and Ethiopia, which allowed the government of Addis Ababa an access to the Red Sea. The Mogadishu Regional Administration organized a mobilization to condemn what they called an invasion of Somalia's maritime territory and threat to its national sovereignty. In this sense, demonstrators refused the agreement that gave Ethiopia access to the port of Berbera on the Red Sea and to Bali's military base. In turn, the Somalis claim that the Somaliland region has not gained wide international recognition despite having declared its autonomy from Somalia in 1991. We have come to the end of this brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. With Telesur English, I'm Ana Rosabal. Thank you for watching.